Hey everyone, Valued here, and today I wanted to make a really quick video for you talking about 5 things that most newer Diablo 4 players might not do until much later in the game that stops them from gaining a lot of power. First, I need to talk about Glyphs. Now, if you're level 53, you can have one Glyph if you route correctly on the starting board. Let me talk about why Glyphs are so strong for just a second. Since my channel has a lot of people playing Rogue, I'll stick with a Rogue example for, let's say, the Barrage Rogue. A great example of a rune that can be build-defining is Exploit. This rune is a literal game changer. It reads, for every 5 strength purchased within range, you deal 1% increased damage to vulnerable targets. But the more important part is the additional bonus. When an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. This can't happen more than once every 20 seconds per enemy. So let's think really fast about the implications of Exploit. So without the glyph, we still have a few ways to make enemies vulnerable. We have Blended Shadow Imbuement, we have Puncture, and we could even change the modification on our Barrage to apply Vulnerable. But with Exploit activated, we can swap Blended Shadow Imbuement to Mixed Shadow Imbuement, take the crit modifier for Barrage, and most importantly, we don't have to actively think about making enemies vulnerable, rather we're applying it passively with any attack we're dishing out. Now, I will admit that's probably the most valuable example of a glyph for this build, but every glyph adds a lot of power to your build, so don't sleep on getting glyphs and upgrading them to increase the scaling value. And if you're curious on how to get glyphs, you do that through Nightmare Dungeons, and each Nightmare Dungeon you finish, you can upgrade your glyph. Moving on to tip number 2, upgrade your gear. I don't know why this is still a problem, but here's a newsflash. If you're past World Tier 2, you should be upgrading your gear very often. When you make the jump from World Tier 2 to 3 and then World Tier 3 to 4, you're going to naturally feel weak. But you're going to feel extra weak if you're missing free power from upgrading your gear. Now, this might sound like a no-brainer, but hang on, it's not that simple. You do have to keep in mind that upgrading gear past level 3 gets very costly. Even upgrading all your pieces to level 3 can be expensive, especially if you're on your first character. But at bare minimum, every single piece of gear that you have equipped should be upgraded to level 1. I personally at level 1 have been capped on Rawhide and other common resources since level 95. They're very easy to get and you don't have to worry about them, so make sure you're upgrading gear to level 1. For tip number 3, check the merchants. I've talked about this before, but this tip is actually huge. I'm going to show you this ring, for example. I got this best in slot ring from a merchant. That is literally insane. I've done easily 500 dungeons and didn't find a single ring with crit strike chance, vulnerable damage, and crit damage. But from just casually making sure every time I visit the blacksmith area that I'm checking the vendors and then making a quick stop at the jeweler, I found this beautiful ring. Now, this is a really simple tip and you shouldn't buy every piece of gear, especially before World Tier 4, but when you get into the late game, make sure you're checking the merchants. You'll be surprised with the results. For tip number 4, do your renown early. One of the easiest ways to gain a ton of power in Diablo 4 is just by doing your renown, which essentially is just playing the game. Now, I know targeting renown is very boring. Even if you love horizontal content in games, renown is just kinda not fun, but it is very important. Okay, if you don't want to get all the renown zones to level 5 until later on, I completely get it. Myself, I'm not even at level 5 in every zone. But early on, you should really push through and try to get all your renown zones to level 3 for the skill points at bare minimum. Plus, if you can be bothered to do the Altars of Lilith, they're really helpful and are going to make sure you have enough stats to activate the secondary properties on the rare nodes in your Paragon board. For my last tip, this one's going to be a shout out to another video I made that didn't get a lot of views, but everyone should know. In your settings, you should activate the advanced tooltip options and bind a force move key. The advanced tooltips are important for understanding your gear better and comparing new gear to your existing gear. Force Move is a keybind that allows you to move through enemies without worrying about your character stopping to auto-attack them. So if you haven't turned those settings on, make sure you go into the settings and activate them. And bam! There you have it. 5 tips for Diablo 4 that should help out new and possibly even experienced players. If you've been here before, you know I don't like wasting your time and fluffing these videos up any longer than they need to be. Thank you all so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to join the community by pressing that sub button so you don't miss another upload. But with all that out of the way, my name has been Valued, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.